Hey everybody, today we are back with another J Play segment, and this is going to be one of my favorite decks from 2004, which is going to be Gardevoir EX. Now, as far as an actual meta deck, I think Gardevoir is easily a tier 1 deck, but it also has, it does very well against a lot of the other tier 1 decks like Blaziken and Swampert, but it can struggle a little bit with some of the mid-tier decks like Shiftry, for example. Team Magma can also be a struggle for the deck. So I'm going to go ahead and play 5 games with the deck. I'm actually really happy with the 5 games we got. They were a lot of big meta decks, some very good players in there. So I think they're going to be some good games to watch and commentate on. When I film these, I basically just take the first 5 games I play. Otherwise, it would be way too hard for me to try to film 20 or 30 games and then choose the best 5. This time I did end up filming 6. I ended up losing a game against Nino while he was playing Crobat Gorebyss. So he did win that game. The problem was I forgot I was filming it, and I kept checking my Facebook in between turns. So I didn't think you guys wanted a 20-minute video with 10 minutes of it being my Facebook drama. So I cut that one out, but then I filmed 5 other games. The other thing that I found really cool was that sometimes these old formats, they've been getting featured more and more on, I would say, more mainstream channels. Celio's Network has featured some old format games. Tricky Jim has featured some old format games. And one of the things, we actually ended up playing a game against a Swampert deck where I thought he might have seen my video and was playing that list, but it was actually, basically, Tricky Jim took my Swampert deck, changed 2 or 3 cards in it, and then he was featuring that on his channel. And basically the list the guy was playing was a card-for-card copy of what Tricky Jim had played copying our list. So it was actually really cool to kind of see, I guess, somebody from that channel come in and start playing some old format games too. And I think that's great. For the growth of the old format community and stuff like that, I think it's great to see these big streamers feature things, because I think that's how you get a lot more new players on stuff. Like when people come and find my channel, usually it's because they want that old format content, but a lot of the times when you have bigger streamers and bigger YouTube channels featuring this old format content, there are people that are looking for their content, and then they're getting exposed to it through that. So I think that's awesome to see, and I guess that was just a little segue there, but I think that's awesome to see. I hope we see more of that in the future. I love seeing that. I love seeing new people get into the community here. So yeah, we're just going to go ahead and jump into the 5 games here. Any questions or anything, make sure to put them down below, and I'll do my best to answer them. And then I'm going to go ahead and just link, I'm not going to talk much about the deck right now, I'll just go ahead and link the video I did on the Gardevoir deck a couple weeks ago, where I really break down the deck choices and some different strategies and stuff like that. So other than that, let's just jump into some games here. So, not a great start here. We do get Rolls. We'll have the Magnemite on the bench. Copycats, we do have some options here, but yeah, this isn't the ideal start by any stretch of the imagination. We're playing against Gorebyss too, so this is one of those games where we can't really afford to get a slow start, but at least we're going first. We did hit that Oracle as well. We have the Curlia. We're going to have the boost for a turn 250 on a Skitty if we want it, which those are all going to be great options for us. Okay, it goes Magnemite, Skitty, Mewtwo. And this is an archetype we really haven't seen very much, hasn't been featured on the channel very much, but I think this was a Jimmy Ballard creation from 2004. But basically you're playing that Skitty Magnemite engine, and then you're using Mewtwo EX to get either for early pressure or to get additional psychic energy in play, and then you're using Gorebyss for just major damage. The Magneton obviously combos very well with the Delcatty. The Delcatty's for consistency, but at the same time too, it's always going to make sure that you're getting energy drops. You're dropping a psychic energy every single turn. I do opt for that early pressure. I know that Mewtwo's not going to do anything to me on the following turn. So he plays a Warp Point. Thinking through my options here a little bit. I go ahead, I get the Rolls. I promote the Rolls. He whiffs an energy, which is very fortunate for me. And then I think very fortunate on that first turn that we had a Hypnosis. He didn't have any outs to use the minor errand running to get energy. I go ahead. I do put the Gardevoir first, and I think that's for my hand. I guess I could have done it the opposite way, and then just benched the Dunsparce. But I go ahead and put the Gardevoir first. Yeah, that was a misplay on my part. I kind of realized at this point too that it's going to mess up my my Oracle, and I'm going to go in Side Shadow here, which is going to rearrange the Stevens Oracle. Thankfully, I don't get punished for it too badly. I make the right choice here. I put the Stevens first this time. Energy Burst isn't going to do anything to him. That Exoskeleton is such a good power to have. Opponent looks like he is just drawn really dead here. That's very fortunate for us. We're just going to keep putting that pressure on. And we're going to use a Gardevoir here for some early pressure, and then we're going to try to transition into a Gardevoir EX just to sweep the remaining prizes. Our opponent bringing up Mewtwo here, I don't really like. I mean, he's basically sacrificing an EX. If I have a boost energy, it's gonna knock him out. I'm gonna Oracle here, and this is the point where I do start going for that Skitty Delcatty combo. So I'm gonna put the Skitty first. Then I'm gonna put the Stevens second. Once again, my hand is really awkward. He's low enough I don't really want to copycat him, but at the same time too, that Stevens' advice just isn't going to do me a ton of good. And I think I kind of realized at this point too. So this is some very, very lazy playing on my part. It's going to work out for me, but yeah, it's just very, very, very lazy playing on my part. And I don't know. This is not the best game for me to show that I know how to play Pokemon, apparently. But it looks like our opponent just gets a really, really bad hand, and we're able to just to ride that for the win. The general strategy here was, and those Oracles were really rough, and I basically showed you exactly what not to do with your Oracles, or to be more careful with how you're selecting them. But essentially, the game plan here is we're going to go active with the Gardevoir, and then we're going to transition into a Gardevoir EX strategy. We're so far up in prizes that we are just going to be able to take Gardevoir EX and just ride it through his last remaining few Pokemon. As soon as we get ahead on those prizes, those Mewtwo's trade so badly with us. I think they're a lot better in other matchups, but against Gardevoir, they just trade so poorly. He needed to have a very, very strong Gorebyss focus. And I think one of the downsides of this variation of the deck is it probably plays a smaller Gorebyss line. If I had to guess, probably a 3-3 line. I don't think he'd play a full 4-4 line, just so he could incorporate those Mewtwo's and Gorebyss. Now, if our opponent had the opposite and they got an insane start where they had that turn 1 energy absorption, 2 psychic energies on our Mewtwo, turn 2 Cyburn, it could have had a chance to be a very different game, but fortunately that's not what happened here. And we were just able to set up through some misplays and take a win to our opponent's very, very bad opening there. So, GG, kind of rough game, but it's what happens sometimes. Alright, so we get a near perfect Gardevoir opening. We are playing against James Arnold here, so and it looks to be his Team Magma deck. I'm excited here to have a good game. And this is where, right here, is where I punt the entire game. This turn basically decided the entire game. I mess up. I make a mistake. I wasn't thinking. And I ended up grabbing a third Rolts over the Magnemite. I don't know why I was doing it. I just didn't think. Didn't look through my options. I just kind of instant clicked through what I needed to. At this point, if I would have made the right choice, I think I 60-40 this game because I've got Delcatty Magneton, turn 2, energy draw guaranteed. But that's not what happened, and that's not what I did. And I think all too often, people remember those games where if they make a mistake in the last 1 or 2 turns that cost them the game, those are always the ones like, oh gosh, I had the game, but I misplayed. But there's a lot of games where people punt it in the first 2 or 3 turns of the game, and that's what ends up costing them the game. And that is basically what I did right here. Basically got a dead hand. I've got to play it the best I can, though. I'm going to get a Delcatty. Losing the boost here is actually very unfortunate. Magma is not a great matchup for Gardevoir. By any stretch of the imagination, it's probably one of the hardest matchups, in my opinion. And at this point, we would have had the energy for next turn. We would have had the Magneton. Would have been set. But we're just trying to make the best hand we possibly can here. I'm trying to put some early pressure on him. I know sitting back and not doing anything in this matchup is the worst possible play I could make. Like, it's incredibly bad. You're going to lose in the long run. You've got to put that early pressure on. You can't let him get those multiple energy drops down. I'm just looking at those 2 energy in the discard pile and thinking if I had a Magneton that everything would just be great. See, all he's doing here is doing 10. I do top of Stevens. This is very fortunate for me. I've got to just try to get that early pressure on. I do use the friend ball, which is one of the nice things about playing as Magma. You get so much value out of those friend balls. And the crazy thing is here too, if I would have had the Magneton to use the energy to energy draw, I could have Oracled for a boost along with a regular Gardevoir, had a Psy Shadow off, been ready with the second Gardevoir EX, and I would have had a knockout here. And I don't mean to keep hamming on this Magneton misplay. Like, I'm not salty over it, but I really want to hit that point home where I lost this game in the first 2 turns of the game. Or literally the first turn of the game is where I threw this entire game away. It wasn't any misplays in the next, whatever turns we've got, 10, 15 turns. It was in that first turn of the game is where I punted the entire thing, because that would have been a knockout right there. Looks like he's going for a Brinies play. Yep, and that's what we get. Fighting Energy picks it up. He's going to get a really easy knockout here. Now, we are going to get the Magneton in play. I do have the Delcatty. So at this point, we're trying to recover the best we can. But as I talked about, those first, whatever that was, what turn are we on here? Turn 11, those first 5 turns of the game that I made that misplay is what's really going to cost me. And on top of that, I had to burn a candy to do that too, which is just not good. I'm going to go ahead. We are going to get the energy burst off. Trying to get some initial damage on there. Team Magma Ball is not going to get him anywhere. One of the things I like about James's deck here is you can tell that he has a pretty vast energy lineup. Like, he's playing a basic Fire, playing a basic Psychic. He puts a lot of emphasis on this Camerupt Claydol engine. So we are going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and get the knockout with the active Gardevoir here. And I think he just lineared attack Curlia, which doesn't make a ton of sense. I don't think I don't know if I think that was a very strong play there. I think burning that candy that hurt a lot. I got to get my energy into play. But yeah, if I was able to have a Blossom out at this point, I think I would have had a lot more options. I could have been healing that off, just completely making those linear attacks pointless. But we're tied up in prizes. We're coming back here, but yeah, we burned a lot of resources due to that misplay, and then on top of that, we also we should be ahead of him. And when you're in a situation against Magma where they're ahead on energy drops, you're not ahead. I don't get this linear attack play he's trying to do. Yeah, these linear attacks just seem really weird. I think he's trying to play around something that's clearly not there. Okay, so we do have the Gardevoir EX. It's not going to get me anywhere, though. And he's doing a really good job of keeping his hand size low. He's going to be able to move that Dark up and then Pulverize for the knockout. If he wants to make that play. Yeah, I'm not where I want to be in this game, but I'm definitely not out of it yet. I got to find a Blossom. A Blossom and then... Oh, probably 2 candies and a Blossom to really get us back in this. We're going to need that second Gardevoir out. James is going ahead. He's doing the camera up Claydol trick. He's got that Team Magma's Claydol already, and James is a smart player. He knows that Claydol is going to be huge for him in this matchup. He's probably going to need it at some point to knock out a Gardevoir or Gardevoir EX. So I'm a little disappointed here. I know that feedback's not actually going to do anything. I'm going to go for the sudden flash play. I think I'm holding off for hopes of getting a Blossom. Sudden flash heads there would have been nice, especially after he burned a Brinies already. Plays a copycat. At this point, James just feels confident. He's so far ahead. Yeah, James knows that even if we get a Gardevoir EX out, that we are... He's so far ahead on energy drops. He's getting ready with that Claydol to combat it. Conserving his energy, he's just going to linear attack that Dunsparce. No reason to do anything too crazy. And one of the other cool attacks is James also plays Potion, so that's comboing with the Team Magma's Camerupt. One Potion is going to equal 1 additional energy, which I think is pretty cool. Alright. Yeah, I'm going for that Blossom. I know that's huge. And then I know I'm going to have to Shaman here at some point too, so I'm just getting ready for that. This might be it though, depends on the Claydol. Yeah, if he can, I think he's got to be ahead in cards. Yeah, and we end up we get the GG there. Very frustrating loss for me. I honestly think I win that if I don't make that Magneton misplay, and if I don't win that, it's definitely closer than what it was here. Bad misplay on my part. James capitalized on it, played a fantastic game, and ends up definitely earns the win this time around. Like I said, I'm going to show you the best games. I'm going to show you the worst games, and this was not a good game for me at all. But it is what it is. Alright, so this is going to be another game where we get just an absolutely amazing start here. Dunsparce, Energy, Friend Ball, some supporters. Opponent gets the Dunsparce as well, so we know that we're going to get a lot of... that Friend Ball is going to get us the Delcatty. We know it's going to be pretty solid for us here. Attached to Water Energy, Strike and Run. I'm going to assume we're probably playing against a Swampert deck. No, this is actually going to be a Kingdra deck. And this isn't something we featured on the channel yet. Get our Skitty, Rolts. That we got Friend Ball for the Delcatty. Oracle's going to get us the Magneton, and then on our way to the Gardevoir. He's going to go Wally's training for that turn 1 Seadra. If he does get the turn 2 Kingdra, that could put us in a tough spot here. I think this is one of those matchups where if we set up, I'm feeling pretty confident. But if he's able to get some really, really early pressure on us, we're not able to answer it very well. This game could go in our opponent's favor. I think Kingdra's damage... Kingdra as a deck, the damage output is just so much lower than Gardevoir's, and that's why I feel comfortable if we both set up. But Kingdra's also able to put some more early pressure on the board than I am. And we're going to see that here. He does have the turn 3... I think turn 3 Kingdra EX, yeah, because he started with Dunsparce. The Wally's was turn 2. But he does play that Wally, so if he does get the horsey starting Wally's to a Seadra, get turn 3 Kingdra. But yeah, he's putting some good pressure on us. I'm going to go for the Kirlia. Take 3. Okay, and then this is actually a major misplay on my part here. Because I miscounted the damage. If our opponent has boost, he actually knocks us out. So Kingdra does 50 damage plus 20 more for each water energy not used to pay for the attack. So if he has a boost energy, he's going to hit us for 50 plus the 20 because the water's not used to pay for the attack, which is going to be 70 in the knockout. I don't hate the energy removal play here because of if we get heads, then he'd have to basically we have to get tails and he has to have a boost. I just don't like committing that second energy. To be honest with you, the Curly is probably not even the right call. I would have been, I think, much better off just sending him Barolds and doing Hypnosis. But definitely a misstep for me. Let's see if we get punished for it. If we draw well enough, we can recover, even if he does have the boost. But he's going to be up 2 quick prizes on us. Thankfully, he does not have the boost. Puts us in a much better situation. We do need to draw something here. We are whiffing really, really hard on things. We're going to go ahead, probably Copycat here. Yep. Friend Ball is not going to get us anything. I do go ahead and retreat to the Rolls and do the Hypnosis play. This is what I should have been doing the turn before. I get the heads on the sleep check. Or the sleep check goes my way. So this is going to be a pretty big... Yeah, sleep check for us, especially off that Stevens advice. He probably hit a boost off that Stevens. So, yeah, very lucky sleep check on our part. High pressure system is really interesting. I actually like this as an addition to the deck. It lets him counter Desert Ruins and also gives, say, something like Horsey free retreat. So if he does want to do an early sniff out here, he can. We get the Gardevoir EX. Okay, and then this is misplay number 2 for me. This one's not major. In other matchups, this might have hurt me more, but I could have just attached a Psychic Energy and feedback for the exact same amount of damage I got out of the boost. So essentially, I'm losing a boost energy, which is not good for me in this deck. And 2, I'm also losing an energy attachment for the turn because boost is there and gone. I should have just taken one of the Psychics, attached it there, used feedback. It would have been a much safer play. Boost could be impactful in this game because that Kingdra is actually weak to Lightning. So there could be a point in the game where if I get a free turn, I drop a Lightning under the Magneton, and then Boost is going to affect that damage too. So Lightning Boost is going to be a 40 doubled to 80. If I'm able to get some Psy Shadow, some other energy drops off, I could actually be one-shotting those Kingdras in the later stages of the game with Magneton. Probably going to, yep, set up the Blossom here. Kingdra has a pretty low damage output. I'm just going to want to basically keep it in check, make sure nothing crazy happens. And he's basically using, so what he's doing is he's using Sand Attack, which makes, or Smoke Screen, I flip a coin. If tails, my attack doesn't do anything. And I'm using Heal Dance just to heal that right off. So basically I have a 50-50 chance of hitting him, and he's doing nothing to me. And while this is all going on, I'm building up my board, doing other things. So I'm in a very good spot right now. It's one of those situations where he just drew really dead in this right now in the game, and he's just trying to make the best plays he possibly can. And he's just not hitting anything. And he's doing very well on those smoke screens. It's just not getting him anywhere in the long run. Yep, I'm just getting those psychic energy back. I know my hand size is very low. I know there's going to be a point in the game where I have to probably Desert Shaman or Copycat myself down into a lower hand size. So I'm just trying to get all those psychic energy back, get my energy drops. Maybe get to the point of the game where Psystorm's going to do some real damage. Yeah. And while I'm pretty confident right now, I do want to be careful. Because I've only got 10 cards in deck. I still have 6 prizes that I got to take. I don't want to get into some iffy situations. Now, I've got a lot of ways, Town Volunteers, Copycat, Desert Shaman, that I can play around with things. But one of the things like we've talked about on the channel is in games where you're ahead, and we're definitely ahead right now in this game, you need to switch your mindset from how do I win this game to what could my opponent do to beat me? What would need to happen for me to lose? And while you don't want to get caught up in trying to play around 1 in a million sort of situations, you also want to be conscientious of, what could happen here? What things am I worried about? And in situations like this, it's much better to realize there's a small chance you're going to lose to deck out when you have 10 cards left in your deck than trying to play around deck out when you have 3 cards left in your deck. So I'm not panicking. I'm not making any stupid plays. I'm not doing anything too crazy. But I am very conscientious of that deck size right now. Counting, see if a Psystorm's going to get me there. No, and these smoke screen flips are just coming through for him. Alright, so I do have the Desert Shaman. Finally get a feedback through. Those heal dances are starting to come in. I decide I'm going to take the knockout there. The switch is going to reset the smoke screen to get rid of that. I wanted to save that for a turn when I knew I was going to get a knockout, so I wouldn't burn my only switch, and he just goes like Pokemon Nurse or something like that. He's going for a sudden flash. Making sure I'm getting my energy drops, drop the second Gardevoir, and then we're just going to feed back here. 3 cards left in deck. He gets the Paralysis flip. Alright, 2 cards left in deck. We are holding Shaman. We do have Town Volunteers. We do have some options. Feedback, and then we do take feedback. He throws out the GG. Totally love the sportsmanship there. So really, like I said, it was just kind of a favorable matchup for us, and our opponent just got a really just in that mid game. They got a strong start, but in that mid game they just weren't really able to get anything going. And we were just able to kind of capitalize on that Blossom and then the lower damage output of Kingdra to push us over the edge here. But yeah, it was good. I'm glad we got to play against the Kingdra deck and feature something that we haven't seen on the channel very much. So we'll jump into the next game. All right, so in this game we are going to be taking on a Shiftry deck. We got a pretty decent start with the Magneton Kirlia, the Dunsparce start, and then the Oracle. Oracle's not ideal, but we do know what's going to get us our setup here. Not a great start from the Dunsparce player. He opened with the Skitty. We did take a couple of mulligans. I asked him if he got the Dunsparce off the mulligan. That's the only way I can think of it. Other than that, or the only thing was a warp energy. But even at that point, I think he'd open Dunsparce and then just not the 2 bench. Basically tells us to mind our own business when I ask about the Dunsparce. Sometimes you try to make friendly conversation, doesn't always go over so well. So we get the Magnemite rolled Skitty. Pretty standard opening from us here. We're going to be able to drop the Magneton, drop the Kirlia. Now, this is a very rough matchup. This is probably Gardevoir's worst matchup by a long distance. So I know this being a bad matchup, I'm going to be a lot more likely to take risks. I'm going to be much quicker to take risks in the game, and I'm going to go very aggressive very quickly. This is not in this sort of matchup. This isn't the thing. This isn't the sort of matchup where I want to let this get to a mid and late game and we start trading blows. He's going to come out ahead, so I got to go aggressive. Our opponent tells us this is a children's card game. There is no place for friendship. Okay. At this point, I'm 90% sure he's just messing with us and trolling a little bit. I do kind of worry about the 10% of the time that maybe he's not actually trolling, but we're gonna go with he's just trying to troll a little bit here. Have some fun. Why not? Steven's advice. All right, we did top the Stevens, so we didn't have to make the Oracle play. Didn't really get anything off the Stevens, so that's a little rough for us. We are building up that first Kirlia. It's got to go into a Gardevoir EX. Just the Ruby Sapphire Gardevoir is not going to get us anywhere. We are... Yeah, and I'm getting a little nervous. The plus side here is he doesn't actually have anything. We're not seeing a Nuzleaf, we're not seeing a Seedot or anything yet. He doesn't really have a whole lot going for him. The Delcatty, I'm not incredibly worried about because he doesn't really have a Magneton to back it up yet. So I'm putting the Delcatty on top, then the Gardevoir EX. We're going to go aggressive here. I have the Magneton in play. I'm not worried about that. The idea is we are going to retreat the Dunsparce into the Kirlia. We're going to draw the Delcatty, retreat the Dunsparce into the Kirlia, discard the Dunsparce in hand, get that lightning energy back, energy draw. That's going to give us the Gardevoir EX and 2 more cards. So he's going to Oracle here. Opponent's been pretty energy dry this game. Very fortunate for us they haven't got a strike and run off. But, and this is one of those things though too, when you're playing against a Shiftry deck, they're going to play double Rainbow Energy, they're going to play Boost Energy, so those actual attachable energies to Dunsparce is going to be lower than, say, our deck, for example, like a Gardevoir or Blaziken Swampert deck, where we play a lot of basic energies. I'm going to go just feedback here for the 5. Attach the Psychic to the Rolls on the bench. I got to get a second Gardevoir ready. I've got that boost in hand, so I'm feeling pretty confident if the if I can't get the knockout via feedback, I am going to have that boost for Psystorm. Right now, 1, 2, 3, 6. Psystorm would hit for 60, 70 with the Delcatty. But that Psychic resistance on the Shiftry is just so rough. So that 70 is going to automatically be down to 40. And I can fight through 1 or 2 Shiftries, but I just can't let him just stream Shiftries against me. I'm going to be in a rough spot at that point. Now, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, you got to play Magnetic Storm and Gardevoir for the Shiftry matchup. And to be honest with you, I don't think it sways the matchup enough. I really don't. I think if you play 1 Magnetic Storm, it's just going to get bumped by Desert Ruins. And if you play, a lot of Shiftry decks do play 2 Desert Ruins. So if you play 2 Storm, it's just going to get bumped by Desert Ruins. I don't think it sways the matchup enough. I think regardless of Magnetic Storm, this is still a very rough matchup for Gardevoir, and I don't want to play 2 dead cards against every other deck in the format. And as you can tell here, I'm double rare cannoning. I'm being very aggressive. I'm taking a lot of chances, but I need to get those Psychic Energy in play. I know I'm going to need to get some big Psystorms off. Now, once again, our opponent just doesn't have a whole lot, but he could be holding Boost Energy, like I said, or Boost, just because he doesn't have the attachable energy to Dunsparce does not mean he doesn't have energy. And, something like a Steven's advice, Copycat's not going to get him very far, Shaman's not going to get him very far, but something like Steven's advice could be huge. So he does have the boost energy, matches hand sizes, puts us at 100. At this point, I need to be a little bit worried about an ATM Rock, but nothing I can do about it. Just keep being aggressive. Play the Steven's advice. And yep, I'm just going to boost here. Get as much damage on him as I possibly can. Take that energy draw. At this point, I'm going stupidly aggressive. Against other decks, I might have to think a little bit more, play a little bit more carefully, but no, we're just going stupidly aggressive here. I know how bad of a matchup this is. I've got to do what's going to pay off for me. He gets the Steven's advice. Major top deck from my opponent here. We're up 2 prizes, but he's got a good shot at getting that Gardevoir EX knockout this turn. He's working on his second Shiftry. He has an energy drag, pitching a dark energy. Obviously, I'm happy to see that, but over the course of the game, it's not actually it shouldn't be that impactful. Gets a double rainbow, and he has the ATM Rock. This is a massive play for my opponent. I can recover from this, but it's still a major play by my opponent here. The only thing that's unfortunate for him is, well, that's a great ATM Rock. He's only getting a single Rolls prize, and he's not getting a double Gardevoir EX prize. Checking the board state before I decide what to bring up. Bringing up that Rolls. Start playing my evolutions back down. Very careful not to play the Kirlia. I'm just going to Oracle 2 candies on top, do my energy draw. And that rare candy, Gardevoir EX, that feedback is going to be enough for the knockout heal dance. I still have to counter that Desert Ruins. And I still have to start setting up another Gardevoir. I got to make some plays here. And this is one of the things when you watch me play Gardevoir and I start getting energy in my discard pile. I need to get that energy back in the deck because there's some point in the game I'm going to need to Psy Shadow it. So I'm always going to be trying to grab energy out of the discard pile. So when I play a Copycat, I play a Desert Shaman, I'm shuffling it all back in. And then I'm going to have more Psy Shadow opportunities because we play, I think, 9 Psychic Energy in this. That seems like a lot. But once you're drawing into energy and you're Psy Shadowing, you're going to run out of... It's very common to run out of energy in the deck in the mid to late game. So you need to... I'm always trying to get energy into the hand and then shuffle them back into the deck. Because you can find yourself in awkward situations where, like, you have to Copycat, but you can't draw an energy. You can't draw, like, the one remaining Psychic Energy in the deck off the Copycat. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but situations like that come up a lot playing Gardevoir. A lot more than you might think. So he's bringing up the Nuzleaf here. I'm expecting another Shiftry. I'm just going to try to trade that second Gardevoir with it. That's going to put us at 2 prizes. It's going to put him at 3. And once again, I'm not actually down a Gardevoir EX. I'm only down a Rolls. So that's going to be very impactful for us too. Because technically this, even if he knocks out this Gardevoir EX, so he de-evolved the first one, came back to our hand, he took the Rolls prize, we bring up the second one, and even if he knocks this out, he's quote-unquote going to have to fight a third Gardevoir EX without actually having us play Town Volunteers. So he's doing a scavenger hunt. He's grabbing a double Rainbow Energy. That's either going to be for an energy draw or something. I'm not sure. I feel like he'd want to boost. Like, I feel he's got the Desert Ruins going for him. I really feel like he'd want to boost here. Push aside wouldn't be like the worst thing in the world, but yeah, I think he'd want to try to get a boost there. Maybe they were prized, or maybe he doesn't play. I think we only saw a single boost. He might only play a single boost. I mean, that's all I played. Goes ahead, push asides. We're going to go ahead, get some double Roltzes here. Yeah, you could argue, what if he has push aside again next turn? But at the exact same time, If he goes push aside next turn, then like that's pretty darn good for us too. Like if all he's doing hitting 20 damage and putting a Pokemon back, we'll take that as a win. So, little minor misplay there. I should have pitching the Delcatty is fine. I also could have just pitched the Psychic Energy to get 2 Psychic Energies back, and then attached one and still had one in hand. I'm going to go ahead and just feedback for 80 here. He's in a tough spot because he can't match hand sizes without having a large hand of his own, and I'm actually trying to get to like an 11 or 12 card hand. Even if he goes like Copycat or something to hit that, and then he hits me, I can feedback for a single knockout. So there's definitely a little bit of definitely some deeper thought in the hand sizes playing Shiftry for sure. And from my point of view too, you know, a lot of players when they're playing against Shiftry and they're doing hand sizes, they only I feel like Shiftry always has to think about hand sizes, but people playing against Shiftry, you've got to be really conscientious of your hand size and really think of how many cards you want to have in your hand, how low do you want to put your hand, how high do you want to put your hand, pros and cons to both. There's just a lot of thinking in that playing against Shifter, you've got to be conscientious of and be ready for. Goes ahead, does the Dark Energy. He doesn't have another Shifter ready, so I'm feeling all right here. Now, he could still pull off some crazy stuff. He has the energy in play, so he could pull off something crazy like a Rare Candy, you know, C-Dot Rare Candy Shiftry. That's why I make the Desert Shaman play there. Like, you know, I want to put him at that low hand size. Yeah, just make it as awkward as possible for him to hit a Shiftry next turn. Because if he can't get a Retaliation knockout, basically I'm going to come up and I'm going to go down to 1 prize while he still has 5. And then I only have to fight through a single Shiftry to win this game while he has to basically take 5 prizes. That's going to favor me. Sudden Flash here scares me a little bit. I definitely don't want to see that. Plays an Oracle. If he has an energy to try to Sudden Flash, that's probably best case scenario for him, but he's not getting anywhere with the actual Shiftry. He's doing a Strike and Run. Okay, so this is a rough spot for my opponent. But at this point, I'm actually feeling pretty darn good. Just a couple of, you know, slow turns from our opponent, and we're right back in this. Or, well, we were always in it. We were always ahead, but it's a bad matchup. Shiftry had a lot of... Until the end, you never feel confident, I'll say it that way. Just because of how good Shiftry is. And how good Shiftry is in this matchup in particular. So I'm just setting things up. I think I might have misplayed there. I think I might have missed an energy drop. That's really bad on me if I missed an energy drop there. I just got ahead of myself, wasn't thinking. I also think I could have made a really strong argument to Nurse there, but it probably wasn't worth it. The only thing that really punishes me would be a second ATM Rock. So I'm trying to make it as hard as possible for my opponent to... Okay. I'm trying to make it as hard as possible for basically him to get a Shiftry and copy the hand sizes. He has to get the Shiftry and he has to get the Shiftry boost before the hand size copy. Because if he copies the hand size and then he gets Shiftry, he would need like Rare Candy, Shiftry, boost. It'd be a lot harder for him to match the hand sizes. He might still have been able to do it. I'd have to know what's in his discard as far as the magnetic field, energy draw, and everything. But I mean, playing the game, I'm sure I thought it through, but commentating on this a couple days later, yeah. So, the second ATM Rock was actually really, really good because I wasn't expecting it. It's not going to be enough for him in this game, but I can see where he plays the 2 rocks, and I can see where the 2 ATM Rocks have probably won him a ton of games just because people never expect the second ATM Rock. And if you watch the channel enough, like, I'm not a fan of ATM Rock. I think it's better in the long run to play a lot of consistency cards. I think I'd rather, like, up my friend ball count, play extra supporters, something like that, to avoid getting into dead hands or dead starts. But, and all of that being said, those games you do set up well having those two ATM rocks give you so much more utility than, say, an extra supporter or an extra energy or something like that. So there's pros and cons to it both ways. Now, there's also plenty of games where I am just in situations where it's like, oh wow, if my opponent has ATM Rock, this can be devastating. Like that first ATM Rock where he gets a prize and takes away 2 candies. Beautiful ATM Rock there. And that was my biggest fear. Yeah, so like I said, I'm not a huge fan of ATM Rock. But I also understand how big of a threat it is to play one. And then when you do like he's doing here and you're playing 2, that's also like a huge... you're going to catch a lot of people with that second ATM Rock. And if he had those at the right times, like if he did that first rock and then I dropped all my candies again and he dropped the second rock right there, would have been massive. Absolutely massive. And I definitely want to give him credit on that second rock. I think that was just a great choice, I wasn't expecting that at all. But yeah, if he would have had back-to-back rocks, I think he probably would have won that game. It was just the fact that he got a slow start, didn't have the rocks at the start. Yeah, so all in all, it was great to play against the Shiftry deck, especially to show that matchup, how rough of a matchup that is. And then at the same time, too, it was also great to, I guess, show how I approach such a rough matchup at the same time. So, all in all, good game. Well played by our opponent, just a little bit of a rough start from him. All right, so we get an okay start here. We do get the Dunsparce start, Rolls, with the Delcatty Magneton. So this is basically just an energy shy of being an ideal opening. The Oracle is okay, but I would really like to see a Steven's Advice or something. We go first, which is going to be unfortunate here. Now, we are playing against a Swampert deck. Catches the water energy. So at this point, our opponent is pretty far ahead of us. I go for Steven's Advice and a Gardevoir. I know without any energy in play, that Size Shadow is not gonna, or the Gardevoir EX is not gonna be an option. The Gardevoir is gonna let me start getting Size Shadows in play. I'm definitely gonna be able to Size Shadow and energy to strike and run if all else fails. Gets the Magneton. He misses the Delcatty, but he does go ahead and Oracle here. So he's probably going to put a Steven's Advice and a Delcatty on top of his deck, and probably get set up from there. So we're definitely behind at this point, but we're not completely out of the game. I'm also going to point out that I see a lot of people try to run this Skitty, and I don't understand why. If I was going to play a 50 HP Skitty, just play the Skitty with Tackle. It's a lot better. So we do Stevens, we get the energy. So I go ahead and put the energy on Dunsparce, and then I do Size Shadow another one under the Gardevoir. Thinking through my basics here, make sure I don't misplay like I did against James. And I actually messed up. I didn't mess up, but I was like, I looked through it, and I couldn't find the Skitty the first time through, so I kind of panic looked for it for a couple of seconds, and then I saw one up top, the other one is prized. Goes ahead, takes a Copycat, gets his Delcatty Magneton, double Marsh Stomps. Yeah, so our opponent's just rolling, but I don't think he's as far ahead anymore. Like, I think that last turn was a great catch-up turn for us. And he's definitely still ahead, but the fact that he didn't get that Sudden Flash Paralysis flip last turn is a pretty big deal to us. Yeah, and at this point in the game, after this turn, I think we are just, it's neck and neck again. I'm going to go for the Blossom. I'm going to note that our opponent filled their bench here, and they're not going to have a Blossom option. We are. I think that's going to be very strong. And the other thing I kind of want to note here is, at this point, I thought they were the deck looked very similar to the Swampert deck I posted. I was thinking they might have been playing the same list, or they're a fan of the channel. But what it actually is here, and I realize it this turn and then in the next turn for sure, is they actually follow Andrew Mahone's Tricky Gym, because Andrew played an old format game between like Swampert and Magma, and it was basically he took my Swampert list, changed a couple of cards, and played that. And I think it was 4 cards off from the list that I posted. And then they're playing the exact same list that Mahone played, exact same basics and everything. So I actually think it's kind of cool when you see some really big streamers come in and feature old formats, and then that kind of gets some excitement from other players into it. You know, because if he, you know, considering the fact I'm a much smaller channel, some of the older format communities are a lot smaller channels, but when you get channels like Andrew Mahone that has like 65,000 followers, Celio's Network's another one, I think he has 5,000 or 6,000 followers, you start getting some people into old format games that might not have found this content anyways. Like if somebody comes to my channel, they're most likely there because they want old format content, where if they go to something like Tricky Gym or Celio's Network, they want Pokemon content, and then this is the content they get, and then that kind of gets them excited, which I think is awesome to see, and I hope we get more of that in the future. Now, I'm going to say I did go aggressive there. I brought up a Gardevoir. I wanted to take that first prize. I thought that was important. I knew he wasn't going to be able to get the return knockout. To get the return there, he would have needed a Mudkip, Rare Candy, Swampert, and a third energy, so I figured that was like just near impossible for him to have. Maybe near impossible is not a term that I should be using in Pokemon very often, because it seems like a lot of my opponents do kind of end up with the, what do they call it, the nuts sometimes, but, yeah, so he brings it up. I think he goes ahead, he tries to Crushing Wave the bench Gardevoir EX. This is an okay play on his part. But essentially I just recognize that I have to put pressure on him. So we're going to boost. We're going to hit him for 80. The other option would have been to switch and then just use feedback for 100. Either or would have been fine. This option I think is a little bit more aggressive, and it preserves the Gardevoir EX just a little bit better. So he goes ahead, does play the energy there, gets another one on the Ditto. So we're going to be into kind of an interesting situation here where the Swampert EX is going to knock out Gardevoir, and then I'm going to have to come up and feed back the Swampert EX. But at the exact same time, I've got to keep my hand size low enough that I don't get knocked out due to Ditto. Now, even if he would have gotten his hand below the 7 cards, like if he would have 6 or 5, we still could have boosted there for the knockout, so I wasn't worried about that. Get the Gardevoir EX, setting up the second Gardevoir. You do kind of see in some of these games where that Dunsparce on the bench is taking up a bench spot. I would much rather have like a second Roltz there, something that I could kind of build additional attackers with. But I felt going aggressive was far better than trying to trade Dunsparces with the opponent. So big feedback knockout there. We go up. We go down to 3 prizes. Opponent is up 5. We're ahead by 2 right now. He looks like he's committing to this Ditto play. And when he's committing to this Ditto play, that means we're going to go down to 2 prizes before that Gardevoir EX is going to get knocked out. And I'm feeling pretty good at that point that we can take 2 additional prizes off of our opponent, especially with how energy-intensive Swampert is in general. Typically, this should be a pretty favorable matchup for Gardevoir, but it's not one that you're going to sit down and call an easy win. It's slightly favorable, probably a 60-40, 65-35 sort of situation. But definitely a matchup that Swampert can win. Goes ahead, uses the feedback. Heal Dance is the active. No, I definitely am trying to build up that second Gardevoir EX. The other option there would have been to try to get a Gardevoir and then a Lightning Energy, and then I could have switched Magnetic Force for the knockout on the Ditto. To preserve that Gardevoir EX, that would have been an okay play too. It would have left me in a rough situation if they would have had an answer to that Gardevoir, or some way to knock out that Gardevoir EX. Or that Magneton, which he probably could have knocked out the Magneton, and that could have left me in a rough spot. I actually think losing the Gardevoir EX is less of a problem for me than losing the Magneton. Because I can even have situations like the Magneton at some point in the game with a boost energy can probably knock out a Swampert. So here I'm getting a little watching his hand size, and I'm hoping he's not watching his hand size, because if he's not careful here, we're just going to feed back to knock out that Swampert, because he's obviously committing to the Swampert to knock out the Gardevoir, which is fine. But he's got to essentially keep his hand below 9, because he's going to take 2 prizes for knocking out the Gardevoir. So he's at 11 right now. Yep, and then he is going to get his hand below 9. Highly unfortunate for me. He basically plays that perfectly. He goes up to 10 cards. I'm trying to see, can I Psy Storm here for the knockout? I'm going to have a Psy Shadow. And I'm going to come up shy. 8, 9, 10. I think I'm doing 100 damage either way. Definitely going to Psy Shadow here. Try to get those Psychic Energies into play. Now, this might not seem like the best option, but ironically enough, we have the Sonic Boom Magnemite in the deck, which is one of the reasons that we do play this here, where unless he nurses that Swampert, that at some point in the game, we can bring out Magnemite and Lightning Energy, and we can do 10 damage to that bench Swampert and take a prize off of that. As far as our opponent goes, this is just basically an ideal setup from him. He's got 3 Watercall Swamperts, 1 Swampert EX. I must have missed the Town Volunteers, but we are playing this game at a little bit faster. The speed on this game is put a little farther ahead. Okay, so I do get that Lightning Energy down. That is critical. Our opponent does not retreat the Swampert here. He's just going to let it get knocked out, which is not a bad play at all. The one thing I do want to note here is and this is why I'm not a huge fan of like the triple Watercall Swamperts or trying to go super aggressive with Swampert in a lot of matchups, is you run into situations like this where essentially all we're doing is we're using Blossom to heal off. He's hitting for 50, we're healing 20. He's maxing out at 30 damage a turn, while we're maxing out at 120 plus, or Psy Storm if that does more. The auto sleep is really nice, really crucial, but it's not. It doesn't offset the fact you're hitting for 30 damage a turn in a lot of matchups. So the Watercall Swampert is great. It can be a great situational attacker. It's great in certain matchups as an attacker, but just be conscientious of that. 50 damage a turn, a lot of the time is not going to get you there, especially if the opponent does have a Blossom. But yeah, it was a well-played game on both sides. I think this is just something where the matchup favored me a little bit more, and we both got pretty decent starts. But it was great to see basically somebody that was a fan of Tricky Jim come in and want to play some 2004, and hopefully we'll see him again.